Hi everyone, my name is Laura and I've been running the East End Women's Museum's Newham Heritage Month project, Ready, Set, Go, Newham Women in Sport. I'll be chairing tonight's discussion, and before we kick off, I'm just going to tell you a bit about the museum before we meet our speakers. So the East End Women's Museum was established in 2015 and is all about both the extraordinary and the everyday stories of East London women, both past and present. Beginning as a positive protest to a Jack the Ripper museum, the East End Women's Museum is dedicated to putting women's lives centre stage, increasing representation and recognition, whilst also challenging gender stereotypes and inequalities. As well as more well-known female pioneers, such as the Bow Match Girls and Sylvia Pankhurst, we also forefront lesser-known tales, including housing activist Mala Sen and the first Black female international athlete, Ethel Scott. All this, as well as witches, pirates, carers, aunties, and more. The East End Women's Museum delivers research, exhibitions, events, and online engagement, often in collaboration with creative and community partners. From its programming to its governance, the museum is rooted in community-centred practice and seeks to be purposeful, building skills, confidence, connections, and well-being locally. Up until now, we've been a pop-up museum, but our physical space is due to open just across the border from Newham, embarking within the next year. We're so proud to be a part of Newham Heritage Month for the third year in a row, with 2020's project looking at community activism of women of colour, and last year's project exploring stories of Newham shopkeepers and dock workers. These can all be found on the Newham Heritage Month website, which we can link you to. As well as this talk, we also have a physical exhibition this year at East Ham Library, which is open from now until the end of the month. And we're also putting on a Family Games Day on Saturday, the 18th of June, again in East Ham in Central Park. And you can find out more about these events on the Newham Heritage Month website as well. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our two speakers for this evening, Yasmin Harun and Mena Abuehi. Yasmin, if I could just hand over to you, and if you could tell us a bit about yourself and your involvement with the project.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Yasmin Harun, and I was asked to give a little bit of history about how I got involved in sports. So I run a Muslim Sports Association. It's a charity which engages Muslim women and ethnically diverse women and girls in sports, a variety of sports, such as football, basketball, badminton. And I was asked to do an interview about why I started that and the barriers that we faced when I first got into sports. I've always loved sports. I went to school at Plashet School. And we played lots of different sports there. But after I left school, there wasn't anywhere for me that I could feel comfortable. And that's why after many, many years, after I got married, after I had children, I wanted to get back into sports and I started MSA again.
Brilliant. Thank you, Yasmin. And our second speaker is Mena. Mena, if you could just introduce yourself as well, please.
Yes, my name is Mena Abuehi. I'm currently a student, a museums and galleries student at Westminster. And for this project, I worked as a researcher, and I was involved in finding out about, the history of some of the women involved in this exhibition and conducting interviews, and really to get everything we needed for this exhibition. It was a very interesting thing to be involved in, and I'm happy about the part I played in putting it together. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mena. So my first questions really are for Yasmin. I'd love you to tell us a bit more about your story. And as Mena said, she interviewed you for our project. And in that interview, you mentioned that it was your experiences as a Muslim woman and the difficulties that you faced in trying to practice sports, but also aligning with your religious and your cultural beliefs. Can you just tell us a bit about your journey to setting up MSA and really how you felt about that?
Yeah, so as I said before, I was really passionate about sports. Growing up, I played a variety of sports. I played football, I did cross-country running. I was very athletic in terms of, I loved 100 meters running. I played hockey and rounders. But when I left school, I just felt there wasn't anywhere that I felt comfortable playing. So the local clubs around me just I didn't see anyone that looked like me. So me wearing a hijab, I would have been the only one. I would have been the only South Asian person there as well. So it was very difficult for me to fit in with my culture and my religion. So I left sports completely. And I went to the gym because there were female-only gyms available, but it just didn't feel the same. You missed that sports team, the team playing sports, and that social aspect as well. So in 2008, I started volunteering for a local charity, and we had a load of women coming for basketball, but it wasn't like that at the beginning. When I started basketball, there was barriers within the community as well, because they didn't feel sports was something that they could do. They felt that it was a barrier for them to be interacting. Everything else came first. So their family came first, their jobs came first, their profession came first, and they didn't come first. And it was about changing their mindsets that they needed to take time out for themselves. And look after their own bodies and get healthy and get active, and to prevent any diseases or health issues in the future. So it's about educating them and changing that mindset. And eventually with basketball, we started getting good numbers. And it took a long time. It actually was quite a struggle, but we were getting allies from the men in the community. And that was really good. That was a positive thing, because I didn't think we would get that support first. But once the communication started going around of what we were trying to achieve, it went from one session of basketball to then badminton, to then yoga, to then Pilates. And we were getting lots and lots of demands for lots of different sports to be set up. But I really struggled when I was starting football, because I couldn't find a female football coach, especially someone from within the community as well. So we had somebody come from Enfield, and by the time she was coming, she was half an hour late every time because of the travel. And I thought, this is ridiculous. We must have somebody local that was able to train us. And I couldn't find anybody. So what I did was I worked with local national governing bodies, and I set up a tailored FA Level 1 course. And we had people from the community become coaches. And that addressed the issue of a lack of female coaches within the community. And once they saw a female football coach, more people from the community started playing football, because they saw a role model that looked like them, spoke like them, understood the culture, understood the religion. And they thought, if they can play and if they can coach, then I can play too. So the numbers started to grow, and I started to make it into a mother and daughter session. So they all both came together, and it was really successful. So all the sports, eventually it started off really, really quiet. So you had one person, then two people, then three people. And eventually, once word got out of what we were trying to achieve, then it became really successful.
Technology, the ability to speak in a structured way about the...
I'm asking everyone, sorry, latecomers, to put yourselves on mute. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end of the interview. Please continue, Yashmin.
Yeah, so it was a struggle at the beginning, but we started to get a lot of community allies. People were putting the word out there that what we were trying to achieve. And it wasn't just Muslim women that were coming to our sessions. It was all women, because they felt very comfortable in a female-only environment. Nobody was there. They were not body conscious. They wore what they wanted to wear, and they felt really comfortable. And it was a social aspect as well, more than the sports itself. They had a really good social aspect. So if they were sitting on the sidelines having a chatter, we didn't mind, because that was one aspect of mental well-being that we were addressing as well. And they built a lot of our participants have built really good, strong friendships as well, which have taken outside of MSA. And it's been really successful in terms of, we've won loads of awards now. We've become a charity from an association. We've become a charity in 2019. And we've won loads of awards as well and got lots of recognition. So it's been a journey and a half. It's been hard work, because I have a family too. It's been a lot of time commitment, working full time as well. This is like another job on top of that. But it's been the number of women that we've engaged with, the transformation that I've seen from individuals. Because when they first join us, they don't have that confidence. They're very anxious. a lot of them have never played the sports that we offer. For example, cycling as well. A lot of them didn't learn how to cycle growing up. They didn't have that opportunity because the family didn't let them. And we've given them that opportunity to learn how to cycle, and they absolutely love it. Some of our riders have now done charity rides. They did the Ride London a couple of weeks ago. They've rode from London to Brighton and did that charity run. So, you know, they've got that confidence. They've got things that from it that they never thought they could do. They've reached, you know, potentials that they never thought they could do. So it's been more than just the sports. They've actually been empowered through the sports that we offered, and we've given them more than just the sports. It's the mental well-being, it's the social aspect, it's giving them employment as well. So, you know, we use sports as a power to change their lives and that social change as well.
Sorry, Laura, I know you're trying to ask me to unmute you, but I've just give me a second if you don't mind. There's a lot going on here. It's not. There you go. You should be able to do that now.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. So many technical hurdles to jump through. Yeah, thank you. I think that's such a brilliant story, and I love that you said it took perseverance going from one person to two people, because I think sometimes in the arts we put on something and it's one person turns up and you think, oh, and then yeah, actually having that patience to persevere really, I mean, it goes to show, doesn't it? That's your story and people have really benefited from it. Can I ask what was the time frame like in that, sort of from you setting up to being where you are now?
So we set up in 2014. So we've been going nearly 10 years now. But yeah, the first session of basketball for 3-4 months, we only had me, the coach, and one other girl. And everybody told me to quit because my boys were quite young at that time. I was working full time. My health wasn't too good at the time as well. And everyone just said, you know, this is not going to work. Just give it up. And I felt, no, there must be other women out there who played sports at school who have left it now because they didn't have somewhere to go and play. They must want to come back into sports. I know basketball is very tough in terms of it's very physical, very draining, very hard work, but it's very fun once you start playing it, and it burns a lot of calories. So once the community, it was actually WhatsApp groups that helped us get more people in. It wasn't even like leaflets or advertising or anything like it. It's word of mouth through WhatsApp groups. And once people started to bring their friends along, so once joined and then they started to tell their friends, it started to grow. And then at one session, we had actually 40 ladies come. So it grew from that one person to 40 ladies coming a week. And it was, you know, really good. And then Badminton England approached us and said, would you do badminton? And badminton for South Asian community is a massive sport back home. And there were women that joined that session and said they hadn't played in school as well. And that was back home. So they really missed badminton. And, you know, some of these players, if you see them, you think, gosh, they could have made it maybe like professionally if they were given that opportunity. And it's such a shame they weren't given that opportunity. And I wanted to make sure that we were giving opportunities, not only for women to come back into sports, but for the younger generation as well, to say that sports for the Muslim community especially is not something that shouldn't be done. I think growing up, for women especially, sports was something that boys did. It wasn't something that girls did. And I wanted to change that mindset. I think in our religion, you have to look after your body. You have to look after your health. And it seems to be that they pick and choose who looks after your bodies. It's the boys and the men. The women and the girls don't need to look after their bodies until it's too late, when you're diagnosed with diabetes or heart problem or something like that, or you're overweight. So I wanted to change that mindset in terms of you need to prevent those diseases. You need to look after your body, because if you're not strong, who's going to look after your family? We're the head of the family. So it is really important for me to change that mindset. And then mothers became role models for their daughters or for their sisters. And that was the knock-on effect, the snowball effect that we were having, is that the mothers were then bringing their daughters or their sisters or even their moms were coming. So it was really nice to see that evolve happening.
I love that, just that one person has that big knock-on effect, and like you said, the snowball effect of having that representation.
Yeah.
it really makes a difference, doesn't it? And I guess my next question really was, you've sort of touched upon it, but what sort of barriers do you think that women and girls face, perhaps especially in Newham, perhaps especially in the Muslim community, to getting into sport, whether that's professionally or just as a social pastime?
I think the first barrier is the women and girls themselves. They feel like they shouldn't be doing the sports at all. The gym, if they want to exercise, it's the gym, or they do a jog around the park or something. Sports is more as a social aspect, it's a more of a team thing. So sports, growing up, you probably wouldn't see it to be attainable to be doing it after school. It's something you do in school and that's it. So the first barrier is the person themselves. The second barrier is probably not enough support from the family to go out and do the sports after school or after work. And the third barrier was not having enough female coaches. So we want it to be in a female-only environment, and you'll get, for example, swimming. They'll say it's women's only swimming, but then you'll have a male lifeguard. So it defeats the purpose of it being a female-only swimming session. So we need more female coaches. We need to understand what the community wants. So if it's a swimming pool and it's got large glass panels where people can wander in and see, then that defeats the purpose as well, because women want it to be a safe environment. So our sports, we vet the hall, so we don't have any venues where it's a large gallery or large windows. We will cover up the windows and make sure it's a female-only space. And the janitors or the office manager, the hall managers, they know they're not allowed to enter at that time, and they respect that. We have a really good relationship with the venues. So those are the three things that the main things is that having a female coaches and having that belief that they can go out and do it. Because I think the first is making that step to try lots of different sports, because it might be that they don't like football, and we don't want them to just join one sports and then say, I want to give up, sports is not for me. There's lots of different sports to try. It might not be football, it might be badminton, it might not be badminton, it might be yoga. So there is a sport for everybody to love. It's just having a go at lots of different things.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so amazing that you've just got this whole variety of sports. And how did you just pick them based on the coaches that you could find or that you could train, or is it sort of come and join whoever?
Yeah, so we work very closely with national governing bodies. So with the football coaching model that we've used it in badminton, we've used it in fencing, we've used it in tennis. And we've used it recently in archery as well. So we train up our own participants who have shown an interest to volunteer with us, and we'll train them up and they become the coaches. So if we're lacking a female coach, we would work with the national governing bodies and ask them to train our own participants up. So that's one way of doing it. But also we've recently done golf. We're doing rowing over at Fairlight Waters at the moment. So we like to do activities that is probably not the norm for Muslim women to get involved in as well, so that they have a variety of sports that they can try too. I mean, I've been doing golf. I think we did it just before the winter and really loved it. Golf is not something I can watch on TV. I find it really boring, but actually experiencing it and playing it, it was so much fun. There's a lot more to it than just like hitting the ball. There's a lot of technique involved. And the group that we've got who went on that first 6-week taster session have fallen in love with it. And we're trying to get it started again now that summer months are coming.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually what the response is like and what the feeling is like within the group who take part in your activities. Can you just describe that for me a bit?
Yeah, so we have a WhatsApp group. So there's a lot of banter on there. There's a lot of encouragement on there. So if one hasn't been to basketball, like if they saw them last week and they didn't see them this week, they'll ask them, where have you been? I mean, was everything okay? So they'll encourage them to come the next session. So that's really nice. There's a lot of friendships going on as well. So they will meet outside of the group for coffees and stuff like that. And we have a book club. So there's an interaction there. We do a positive mind session where we talk about different aspects of mental wellness, life skill sessions as well. So there's a lot of aspects where they can interact. And we recently did a charity walk and a picnic. So that's another thing that outside of the sports where they can just meet each other outside of the sports and get to know each other as well. So it's a lot of, they're really well connected now, and they have a lot of friendships there.
That's so brilliant. I think just hearing those stories, and it's about not just fitness or looking after yourself, it's about making those connections and mental well-being as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think because a lot of our community, a lot of our participants, all they do is talk to their children all day. So they don't even have that adult interaction apart from with their husbands and extended family. So it's nice for them to then meet other women of like-mindedness as well. So that's another thing that when I started this, I didn't think of anything of just, I thought of it just being a sports organization, but the impact it's had on the whole community is really nice and humbling to hear when you hear their stories. It's really nice.
Brilliant, thank you. And I've just got one final question before we head on to speak to Menna, but this whole Newham Heritage Month we've done it this year, talking about sport, is because of the legacy. Obviously, it's been 10 years since London 2012. I just wanted to touch upon that with you, and maybe how do you see the legacy of London 2020 then, London 2012, how do you see that in the present day now?
Immediately after 2012, there was a huge rise in opportunities and a lot of children entering sports, but again it was the lack of resource and funding available. So Sport England now have a lot of different strategies where they try to engage and tackle inequalities and trying to close the gap, which is a really good thing. But we do lack venues, we lack accessibility, we lack coaches. So that is something that needs to be addressed. And we also affordability is one of the main issues. With the cost of living rising now, it's going to be the sports that people sacrifice, and it's the children that's got to suffer. So it's really important that we make sports as affordable as possible and as accessible as possible, because we need things like football, and which is really cheap to run. It's important that these things are supported, even the arts, even dance, all of this creative arts aspect needs to be supported, because there's more to life than just education and school and maths and English. Children have to be let out to be, burn that energy as well. So that legacy was really good at the beginning of 2012, but I think it's dropped a little bit since. So we need to revive it somehow.
I think that's a really good message, and MSA is a really good example of what you can build up from virtually nothing. And yeah, we need to carry on that legacy. So, brilliant. Thank you so much, Yashmin. I'll perhaps come back to you at the end for some questions. But now I would like to sort of hand over to Menna to join us for some of my next questions, which is more about the project that we've been running and Menna's role as a researcher and how you began your research. Where did you start? Obviously, we don't have our own physical archive as the museum, so I just wanted to briefly get you to just describe how you went about researching these stories that aren't really very well documented.
Yeah, so hello again. I'm Menna. I was one of the researchers for this project. When it came to the research, it was very new and quite eye-opening. Obviously, most people when they start research, it's a quick Google search just to see what you can find. So I did go on Google to see, to find a starting point. But a lot of the people that we wanted to do research on, it turns out that there actually wasn't much online about them. There was virtually nothing for some people. An example is one of the women I did research on was Ethel Scott, who was the first Black female UK athlete. There was nothing on her online, and that kind of led me to start going into the archives to see if there was anything on her there. So I went to Newham Archive at Stratford Library. I went to there. I kind of got in contact with UEL Archive and the archivists that were there, and just asked them if they had anything on some of these women I was talking about. Another group of women I wanted to do research about was the West Ham United female team. And yeah, it was it was not much on them. It was a lot about the male team, but virtually nothing on the women's team. And if you typed in West Ham, it just took you straight to the male team. And with Ethel Scott, unfortunately, even going to the archives, there wasn't much about her either. And I did get to a point where I felt like, oh, I don't think I can do anything on Ethel Scott. I might have to find someone else. But I just thought that by giving up, I kind of added to the problem. Like there wouldn't be anything on her if I too gave up, and it would just kind of continue, and someone as important as her would just be forgotten, really. So I persevered, I kept on looking, and thankfully there was, it seemed like it was a personal blog. Someone who was a personal fan of her had created a page about her and had, found pieces of information about her involvement in athletics. And that was amazing, So I did go there. I read a lot. I found articles. At least I found a date from those, from the blog, and using that date, I was able to go to the newspapers and kind of go back and ask if I could pay for this specific article on Ethel Scott. So yeah, that was how research was.
I think it's really interesting, isn't it, to note how if you type in West Ham, it comes up the men's team, and if you go to Newham Archives, or if you want to look at the photographic archive online, I was going through, and there's only probably about 10% of the material on sports is related to women. And I think that's really interesting as historians, of women's historians, to try and how can we get through that? And sometimes you do have to literally go to blogs and places where you wouldn't usually search. But yeah, I think trying to find and preserve and share. So Ethel Scott's story is in our exhibition. And I think sharing those stories are really important, just to try and keep that message alive.
Yeah.
And I think Menna, maybe if you could talk us through some of the stories that you researched as part of the project.
Yeah. So yes. So with Ethel Scott, so she was the first known, Black female athlete to represent the UK at an international event. And yes, her story was quite scarce, but from the things I did find out, she was into running. She had joined her local she was a civil servant, and through being a civil servant, she joined the civil service athletic group, and that was where she found out that she had a gift for running, and that kind of encouraged her to go into more professional athletic games. And she did win a lot of medals for her running, and through there she joined it was the Berlin Games. And oh gosh, I did the research off the top of my head. The years just lost me. But she did represent the UK in a relay race, and they won silver. But unfortunately, after that, there wasn't much left, or there wasn't much information about her in the realm of athletics. So, it can be assumed that she wasn't able to go on the others. And, she had come from quite a poor background. And back then, a lot of the requirements to participate in sport was that you had to pay for yourself to travel. And she wasn't able to. So her athletic career was kind of cut short because of that. And then another athlete that I did research on was Christine Uhurugu, who is very much well known. Thankfully, she was one of the easier people to research because she's such an important icon. Even to Newham, obviously, she's from Stratford. She's an athlete as well, represented the UK in the 2012 Olympics, and all the, I think her first Olympic Games was the 2000 and, I want to say not 8, but 2004 she participated, but from 2008 she became more prominent in the athletic scene. And yes, as someone from Newham, she had a lot of opinions about the 2012 Olympics. She was the face of the Olympic Games because she was from Newham. And she spoke about in an interview how she got to see Stratford change because she, obviously her family lived there. She still lives there till today. And one of the things that just amazed her about the Olympic Games was seeing a town that she was sometimes ashamed of when she was younger, because she would go to school in Romford and Essex and see how things were, to a town that became so developed because of the Olympic Games. So it did bring her some pride. And there's more on, you know, the things she said in the exhibits. And yeah, those were like my two favorites anyways.
Yeah, I think they're really interesting comparisons actually between the two, sort of a historical example and then an example from the present day. I've got something here just to jump in. I thought I would actually play a quote. So we had another researcher also working on the project who interviewed a lady called Linda Strachan, who is also from Stratford, from Newham, and she went on to be an Olympic fencer, and now runs the Newham Swords training group, and she gives the young people in Newham the opportunity to get involved in fencing. So for that exhibition, I created a clip from her interview, and I thought I would actually just share that with you now. So I'm going to have to share my screen, and I'll also share the sound. But I'd just like to play you that clip to give you an idea of some more of the research that we did as part of the project. Oh, sorry, Faizan, can I share my screen?
Does that allow you?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just make sure I'm sharing sound. Okay, and just give me a thumbs up if you can hear this when I press play.
Fencing now, when I was competing, it was my world, basically. I grew up in East London. I'm from Forest Gate. My mum used to take me everywhere on the bus. They never could, you know, my parents never drove. And to me, it was, at the time, something I did to be different from everyone else. You know, fencing at the time represented an opportunity for me to improve myself, to open up the world really at that time. So I was pretty much focused on getting better and making my dream come true, to make an Olympic Games. So to me, at the time of competition, it represented achieving a goal. And I was lucky enough to represent Great Britain at 2 Olympic Games. But now fencing represents something different for me. Now that I've retired, it represents giving that chance to the next generation. And Newham Swords Fencing Club is run by myself and my partner, Pierre Harper, who's a triple Olympian. And it gives us the chance to create an avenue for young people now to do the same as we did, to travel the world, to make friendships at the club, to respect communities, other communities, and really give them a chance to make a journey, a different journey in life. So fencing to me now represents bringing these young people on and really carrying on those friendships that I made when I was competing. And I still have those friendships now from all over the world. So it's still a big part of my life, but it's enabling other people to have those same chances.
I just thought I'd share that as a really nice clip from, like I say, the rest of the research that we did. The museum is just as much about sharing stories from the present day as it is from the past. And I think as an oral historian, I'm a bit biased, but I think to hear these stories in the present day, I'm really hearing sort of the stories of women that are also going on to help other young people, other young women, is really important. I guess moving on from the stories that we uncovered, I just wanted to ask you personally, Bella, what did you enjoy the most, or did you learn from being involved in the project?
I definitely enjoyed the idea of, going into the archives and just skimming through history, because the project allowed me to look at a very specific thing, which is women in sports, and I was able to do a lot of research, before putting before the things that are in the exhibit. And yeah, it made me realize how important it is to kind of keep a record of things that happen, because you have people, once again, like Ethel Scott, who done some great things, but if it's not being kept, then it's the next generation will never know. So just from a personal standpoint, I've come to start keeping my family pictures, even though I know it's not the same as an Ethel Scott Olympian, but athletic person, sorry, but you just never know, and it's just good to keep things for future reference.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And I guess my final question is, what do you see as the legacy of London 2012 in Newham, in East London, and in projects like this?
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of similar to what Yasmin was saying. The the way the community benefited from the Olympics, structurally. There was a lot of money that went into the development of Newham because of it. And I remember back when, in 2012 and 2011, they asked a lot of school children, myself included, to get involved with doing things like drawings for the Olympics. And I feel like that was such a great time because it got a lot of people interested in sports. And it is one of those things where it was done for a specific reason, obviously the Olympics, but it hasn't been done again. And I feel like it shouldn't just be because of the Olympics that school children get involved in sports or are told about, these sporting events. It should be all the time, because you never know who might, find it interesting and want to get involved. But yeah, just from our standpoint as well, I just think it was a great way to bring more stories to people who will visit the museum or read the exhibition, about the exhibition in the future. Just knowing that there are women that they can aspire to, and just having a record of that for the museum is a great thing.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I can't believe it was 10 years ago. It's gone by so quickly. Okay, thank you, Mela. I would just like to now, I guess, open up to any questions that anyone might have about the project itself, about the museum, any questions to Mela, any questions to Yasmin. Yeah, feel free. You can either, I guess, raise your hand or in the chat box, whichever you prefer. Yeah, Katie, I can see your hand. I can't see everyone, so maybe, yeah.
Katie, you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah. Hi. It's just been really interesting hearing from both Yasmin and Mena. I was just interested to know a bit more about which, you mentioned a few women that you'd looked at, Mena, but how wide was the scope of the research that you did? Did you go further into the West Ham women's football team, for example, or any other sportswomen?
The West Ham football team, I left that one. The only reason I left it was because I did find out later that West Ham, they have their own archive of, that they keep on players. So I decided to forego that for other female athletes who didn't have, an archive behind them, really. So we have a place where information about them can start being kept. So aside from Ethel Scott and Yasmin, there was also Ramla Ali, the boxer. She was another woman that I did research on. And yeah, a lot of research was done into, how they got into sports, or what kind of inspired them up until, the Olympic part, or after the Olympics, like someone like Ramla Ali, who's still representing Somali at international events.
Our other researcher as well, I suppose I'll just hop in here, looked at Edna Child, not Ethel Scott, Edna Child, Jean Pickering, sorry. So there's some more women from history, and she also interviewed Linda as well, which is where the clip came from. So, but to find out all of them, you'll have to come and see the exhibition, which is at East Ham Library.
I'll have to plan a trip then. I'm in Nottingham, so.
Oh no, well, I think Rachel's just put in the chat that some of the research, we've collated it, not quite into the exhibition, but you can see some of the researchers' stories on the link that Rachel's just put in the chat, which is the Newham Heritage Month website.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's okay. I've got a question from Lucy in the chat. I guess this could be for Mena. So, have there been any personal effects of your research? For example, has your individual relationship with sport changed?
Yeah, I'd say, especially this exhibit, it kind of inspired me to look more into the effects of the Olympics on Newham in general. So I am also a student at Westminster, and there was a project that we had to do for London museums. We had to create or give them an example of what a future exhibition could possibly be. So I think just with all the work that I'd done on this exhibit, it inspired me to have a more in-depth look on the effect on Newham in general, from having the Olympics, like the positives, the negatives, in terms of structurally and the demographic. But yeah, in terms of sports, like I've always been someone who I do play badminton sometimes at Stratford. So I don't know if it's changed much, but it was very nice to be doing research on a place that I go to regularly. Anyways.
Thank you. Any more questions from anyone, either in the chat or? Oh, Katie again, sorry. I'm just scrolling through the list so I can try and see who's got their hand up.
Can you hear me? Yes, I'm unmuted. Yeah. Yeah, I actually, one thing that occurred to me was after the point that Mena made about how little there was in the archives. And I've experienced that researching women's athletics, that, most of the archives are actually collections of papers from men, who've been involved in athletics administration. And there's very little from, from women. And that then led me to think of a question for Yasmin, which is, are you keeping records and forming your own archive for what the Muslim Sports Association has done? Because that's something that's really important and should be retained and recorded, I think.
We are trying to. We're a very small charity in terms of we only have trustees running it at the moment. So we all work full time. So resources really, really tight. But we have lots of wonderful stories. We just need someone to sit down and write them for us. But there are some stuff on our website where we have a blog section. So we do ask our participants to write about themselves, and then we upload it onto our website. But there's so many more stories to tell. But it's really about resource and asking someone to just sit down and go through asking the right questions and then recording that and then put it in a presentation sort of way. But it is, if you listen to the stories, I mean, the other day I was at an event and someone just came over and hugged me, and I wasn't really sure why. I thought it was just because I was there, but I later found out it's because she wanted to thank me for giving her the opportunity to learn how to cycle, and just thank me for putting a smile on so many people's faces and making lots of women happy just through sports, because it's given them that individual personality back there, because they're always known as someone's mum or someone's wife, or when they come to our sessions, they're just their individual selves. And I think a lot of women can relate to that. They lose themselves once they become a mum, or someone's wife, and they lose that personal identity. And through MSA, they get a bit of that back. And that was really humbling to hear, because I didn't realize what she was giving me a kiss for, but I thought it's just because I was there at the event, but I later found out that it's because I changed her life so much. So it would be really nice if I could sit down and get all these stories written out and upload it onto our website. It's just a matter of resource. I can't do it myself.
I'm definitely feeling inspired to want to record your stories, Yashmin. Thank you for that question, Katie. I think that was such a good question. Anybody else? Maggie, sorry, I can see you've got your hand raised. Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, great. Firstly, thank you all so much for a very interesting panel discussion. I've been totally inspired yet again. I'm 66 years of age right now, and the reason I'm mentioning that is because in the days when I was becoming a young sportswoman and athlete, there were very different attitudes around then towards girls and young women getting involved in sport, partly because of the sexism involved in that, but also partly because I think there was an assumption that if young women were getting involved in sport, there was There was an assumption that those women were probably lesbians, and that as a result of that, there was a sense of intimidation, and a lot of young women were put off, I think, because of people's attitudes and their prejudice. So I'm just curious to know whether any of the panel members came across any of that kind of discrimination specifically when they were researching or indeed organising of their groups, because I think it can be very off-putting for young girls or young women to feel a sense of fear about people making those judgments, which can be, discouraging and really sometimes making them want to leave the sport. So I'm just interested whether they came across that particular discrimination.
Thank you, Maggie. That's a good question. And I think you're absolutely right that there is that assumption, or was, or probably still is. So yeah, maybe Mena first. I'm not sure if this is something that you've brought up in our feed, but did that ever happen, do you think?
Well, I'd recommend that you kind of read about Ramla Ali's story, because she spoke a lot about how when she got into boxing, she initially got into boxing through school, and it was just a school event. But when she wanted to pursue it a lot further, she kept it a secret from her family because of how she thought they would react negatively towards it. And I feel like it's also involved with, Yashmin. It was a thing of culture and religion. So she didn't feel like her family would be accepting at the beginning, because it just wasn't something that the other people in her family and in her area did. So I'd say, that's kind of a case of discrimination that she felt and had to overcome to kind of further her career.
Would you agree with that, Yashmin? Do you think there's that sense of prejudice, maybe about sexuality, maybe not about sexuality? Do you think that exists still in the community that you work in?
Yeah, I think growing up, I had the support of my father and my brothers, but outside of that extended family, because I loved football, they all thought it wasn't appropriate. All the girls around, all my cousins, my sister, they were very girly. I was very tomboyish, and they always, although they didn't say it outwards, but I can now see, looking back at it, they probably thought that I might have been a lesbian or something. But I think now the attitudes are changing. I've seen it because I'm a director at the London FA. I'm a director at the British Fencing as well. I'm more involved in sports and trying to change those attitudes as well within the community. And they're seeing more role models, more coaches of ethnic and diverse backgrounds, more female coaches, So having role models within sports is really important, whether that's professional and elite and really famous role models, or whether that's at the grassroots where we're all making a difference, trying to get more women and girls involved in sports. It all makes a difference. So as long as you can see someone that is doing something that you want to do, that really does change the attitudes from the community as well. So like our football is led by a Muslim woman, and she's won lots of awards. She did the Queen's Baton run the other day at Stratford, and she's changed and inspired so many girls to take up sports. She goes into schools and engages those girls in sports, and they've all come to her and said it's because she's a Muslim female coach that their dads have allowed them to play football. So, you know, it's small steps, but if they can see someone that's doing the job already, it makes a huge difference. So those small steps will eventually change attitudes.
I think that's so right, Yashmin. And I think even my own personal experience, so I do Taekwondo, which is obviously a contact sport. So I kind of relate to Ramla Ali's story in a way, in that even when I was back at school, the sport that I did was looked upon differently to, you know, I had a couple of girls in my class that did gymnastics and dance, and that was always, for some reason, more favourable than my sport. So I think that was even 15 years ago. So I think it was definitely still existing then, and I'm so glad that we're making progress and taking those steps to try and break down those barriers. Any more questions from anyone else? Maybe in the chat. I haven't been keeping up, so I'll just have a look. And I'm just flicking through as well the screen. Okay, so we're on, we've got 1 minute, so that's good timing. Yeah, I would just like to say thank you to both Yashmin and Mena. And again, would just like to plug the Newham Heritage Month events. So we've got, as I mentioned, the exhibition at East Ham Library and the Family Games Day, which is on Saturday the 18th. We're fully booked on Eventbrite, but we do have some spaces for drop-in as well. And yeah, Yashmin, do you have anything going on with MSA at the moment that you'd like to plug?
We have a charity boat race at Fairlight Waters on the 18th of June. So everyone's welcome down to come and cheer us on. It's a dragon boat race, so there's loads of teams taking part. It's a good competition. It's a good family fun day out. So yeah, if anyone's free on that day, it's the 18th of June over at Fairlight Waters, Redbridge.
Oh, that's the same day as our games day. I was just thinking I'll come to that. Yeah, I think that's it from us. And yeah, you can find out more about the museum on social media, which we can put in the chat now. Sign up to our newsletter, again, from our website, and we'd love to see you at some more of our events. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and I hope you've enjoyed it.